The only thing that I worry about is like a Ginni Thomas popping up, right? So you have someone that is single and someone becomes president, and then he meets a Ginni Thomas who is, and I think most people know, there's some wonder as to how involved she is with what has happened on the Supreme Court, because her husband is on the Supreme Court, and that little pillow
January
talk
6th,
that happens on January 6th. Yeah. And so if someone is not married and then they get married to Ginni Thomas, I'm concerned.
Right. One of the things that is so fascinating to me is why when a black conservative espouses biblical or traditional values, a black conservative man, immediately people want to inquire about that person's relationship status. In other words, who is that black man dating to be saying this white adjacent, white supremacist stuff? That's what it boils down to. The hubbub the past few weeks is related to Tim Scott. And why isn't Tim Scott married? Is Tim Scott gay? Honestly, I could care less who Tim Scott, Donald Trump, even Barack Obama did in their personal life. My challenge and my problem is when they allow what they do in their personal lives to seep over into their policies. And that happens all the time, because what you do in the dark comes out in the light. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. What you do in the dark eventually comes out in the light, because that is who you are. You can only keep your private life private for so long. Eventually, elements of your private life seep out. But what I want to talk about today is a fascination in the black community in particular when it comes to black conservative men and who they date. Because whenever you hear a black conservative man talking about traditional values or things along those lines, this is what you see. You see comments like this that were made to Byron Donalds' wife. If you don't know who Byron Donalds is, he's a Florida congressman who was running for Speaker of the House. He didn't win, but he gained a lot of notoriety because of that. And because of that notoriety, people were making comments about him. And they say, it makes sense. We know why he's talking the way he's talking. But I'm not even just talking about Byron Donalds. You got other black conservative men. You got Larry Elder. You got Daniel Cameron. You got numerous black conservative men, and immediately, as soon as they start talking about things about responsibility, personal responsibility, talking about uplifting the black community, talking about doing things that black people can do because we have our own agency. We don't have to depend upon the government. We don't need handouts. We don't need affirmative action. All those things that are items and agenda items that should be important to the black community, because we do have agency. We do have the ability to achieve. And there's not systemic racism. There's not someone standing over us, keeping us down. But yet, when a person says that, like for example, myself, immediately people think, oh, that person must be married to a white conservative woman. Latest example, Sunny Hostin. When talking about this whole Tim Scott deal, the problem is if they get with a Ginni Thomas.
The only thing that I worry about is like a Ginni Thomas popping up, right? So you have someone that is single and someone becomes president, and then he meets a Ginni Thomas who is, and I think most people know, there's some wonder as to how involved she is with what has happened on the Supreme Court, because her husband is on the Supreme Court, and that little pillow
January
talk
6th,
that happens on January 6th. And so if someone is not married and then they get married to Ginni Thomas, I'm concerned.
Right.
So I would like to know what I'm getting into.
Is Ginni Thomas available the way you sound?
And the only a Ginni Thomas-like person.
Ginni Thomas is code word for a white conservative woman who's influencing a black conservative man. That's exactly what Sunny Hostin is indicating. That's code language. That's coded language. That's a dog whistle. You understand? That is coded language saying, oh, what happens is these black conservative men, when they get up in power, they end up with a white conservative woman who influences them to push these radical right-wing agenda items that hurt the black community. That's what she's saying without saying it. And it's disturbing because when black liberal women date white men, you don't hear a peep. Serena Williams, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the judge who's overseeing the Trump case, they all are married to white men. But you would not have known that because the media keeps that quiet. Social media doesn't get in an uproar. But as soon as a black conservative man begins to rise in the polls, begins to elevate, immediately the assumption is, oh, he's married to a white woman. And what does it matter that he's married to a white woman? You know what that implies? You're saying that that black man can't think for himself. You're saying that black man is being pulled along by the white woman. That white woman is controlling that man. That white woman is manipulating that man to make him think the way she wants him to think. That is so demeaning. As a biblical conservative, that is so demeaning that is the first thought that enters most people's mind, especially in the black community, when a black conservative man starts to speak truth about what's going on in the community and stands for traditional biblical values. Because you have a victim mindset, people. They have convinced you that you are oppressed, and that is a flat out lie. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. Who cares if that black conservative man dates a white woman? That man is strong enough to stand on his own 2 feet, and he has to if he's going to express conservative values as a black man, because that is anathema. That is being a pariah. That is causing you to be an outcast in the black community. So instead of assuming that the white woman is telling that black man how to think, how about you give that black man some respect? Give that black man some respect.